Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 12th of December. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you some standout strands to look out for, which we can all relate to collectively, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in much greater detail each of the 12 zodiac signs. Now, as this week begins, a truly notable event. Mercury recently moved into the rather business-like sign of Capricorn, enters its shadow period. This is the period before the retrograde begins, which is on the 29th of December. It comes out of that on the 18th of January. But if we are dealing with anything that is more to do with those worldly affairs, it is going to be important to really manage the detail. But despite this, later this week, Mercury does forge a sparkling alliance with Uranus. And it's suggesting, this combination, that if we can think of new and fresh ways to approach our worldly interactions, even at this late stage of the year, perhaps the shadow period and then the retrograde is asking us to rethink or flex in new ways, which can actually be really valuable to us. Now, also, right at the start of the week, Venus and Jupiter, the two planets of fortune, are just in a square. This runs over from the previous week. It could give us an opportunity to be very generous to someone. Maybe we can get together with people that we have a kinship with, particularly actually through those worldly interactions with Venus in the 10th house. But this is a week when the Sun does square up with Neptune. If you remember, this began on the last day of last week. The Sun in the sign of Sagittarius is very much about discovery, adventure, independence, travel, higher knowledge, philosophies, and even education. Can be around the rule of law. Neptune, of course, is very much to do with dreams. It's a very mystical influence, and at its best can have quite a magical impact. But I think this particular influence can see us amplify or exaggerate our senses, even if they're not conscious. So if something just puts us in a bit of a spin, there could be a tendency to buy into it a little bit too much. Ironically, Jupiter, the other ruling planet of Pisces, along with Neptune, is in a sensational link with Pluto for the whole of this week. If there is something that you've been working on in a physical way for a long time that has required a great deal of patience, it could be your links with someone that have been developing, perhaps not so much at a tangible level, more an instinctive level. There could be someone that your association with can actually end up being very fortunate indeed. And from Monday through to Thursday, the Sun's in a very constructive link with Saturn. This can offset some of the distortion the Sun's right angle with Neptune can create. And remember, with that Mercury shadow period, managing details is important. So what Saturn is doing with the Sun here is asking us to be a bit more detached, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is airy, to think through our ideas for expansion, but research them in a very thorough and step-by-step way. And that can push back some of the dissipating energy of Neptune square to the Sun, which can drain a little bit of vitality from proceedings. Now, on Saturday, there is a quarter moon in the precise sign of Virgo. This is just saying to us, if we do feel that we want to help out or volunteer or assist people in some kind of ways, that's very laudable. We just need to make sure in the following week that we're not promising to do something that actually becomes a bit of a bind to deliver on, perhaps around those festive arrangements. But right at the end of this week, it's the Sun that comes into Jupiter, into a square with Jupiter, replacing Venus. And this is an aspect really that can actually have a very generous side to it. If we can find ways to embrace the more traditional festive strands of looking out for those who are less fortunate, of just small but important gifts, these type of things actually could really have quite an impact on the recipient. But it's also saying to us not to get too caught up in trying to be too much of a people pleaser, I think, around our budget if we are facing some financial realities which are tricky. I think we need to stick with what we feel really comfortable with. But there could be some kind of discussion at the end of this week where you find yourself talking about something where you have a very different worldview from the person that you're discussing this issue with, but actually you can gain or learn something from what could even be a disagreement if you're open to the possibility. Now, we're nearly in 2023. What will the year hold for you as an individual? You can gain a lot from the zodiac forecasting for sure, but it's your personal astrology which is really crucial. If you give me your time, date and place of birth, I can give you your forecast for the coming year. And this will give you searing insights as to when planetary influences are impacting on your natal chart. But also my special package of 30% off. You can get your life roadmap, character analysis report. Please see the link below. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. I'd love you to subscribe. If you're an ongoing follower, thank you so much for joining me once more. Now, here is your in-depth forecast for each sign. So Aquarius, your week commencing the 12th of December forecast sees Mercury slow down in your 12th house. This can trigger a little bit of anxiety, uncertainty. Remember, every single year, and particularly if your planets are more towards the earlier parts of Aquarius, you do enter a time when we have the winter solstice of wanting to just hunker down a little bit, have time to just recharge, have more moments of peace and reflection. And there could be a sense that this builds up with Mercury slowing down in this way. But also Mercury links brilliantly with your modern ruler of Uranus later this week. A conversation that you're just not expecting at all can absolutely delight you. Are you going to hear from someone you haven't heard from for a long time? Well, it could be someone that you've had great affection or a close relationship with in the past, but maybe there has been some distance or even a little bit of a breakdown in that relationship. Also, Saturn, your traditional ruler, is linking very well to the Sun. So where you have got a clear vision of what you want from your future, despite the fact that you're entering the time of the year when you do know that you may just need to withdraw a little bit, actually those longer term plans could take a substantive step forwards. The big real challenge for us all this week is the fact that Neptune in house 2 for Aquarius, everyday money, is squaring up with the Sun in the most idealistic part of your scope. So if you are someone who feels very passionate about social justice, inclusiveness, looking out for those who are less fortunate, this particular aspect could see you do something really lovely, whether it's make sandwiches for a shelter, whether it's make a donation, whether it's check in on a neighbour who's perhaps elderly, see how they're doing, to take them around the card and have a bit of a chat. That type of thing would really be surfing the Sun square with Neptune wonderfully well. But if you're trying to predicate your future on a new idea, it's vitally important that you do work through the financial implications of this. We are all, of course, dealing with a new reality, but the quarter moon, which occurs on Saturday, tweaks your future hopes in your 8th house, very much to do with longer term finance, any loans, pension payments and stuff like this. So if you are thinking about making some significant financial changes, don't let your natural Aquarius idealism influence the practicalities of this situation too much, because I don't necessarily think that's going to be in your best interest. Saying that, as the week draws to a close, the Sun starts to move into a square with Jupiter, which is actually going to be reflected in the winter solstice and the beginning of cardinal quadrant 4, and also the Capricorn new moon. So we're going into a period where there could be a sense of enlargement that comes from Jupiter, and we need to keep a sense of realism through the sun's journey. So I think for you, yes, again, you may want to help out those who are at the tougher end of the spectrum, and that's laudable. But just make sure that whatever you do around your finances, because Neptune can be such a very tricky influence, you're doing things that you feel utterly comfortable with. So, if there's something that you want to buy a gift for someone for, but it is beyond your budget, I would really think about the things that are really universally important, which is spending time with people, listening to people, understanding their stories, sharing your story, having laughter, where possible, maybe sharing some nice food. These things are so underestimated in this very materialistic world that we live in. And I think if anyone can understand that, it is you.